Thanks so much for joining us today. It's so good to have you back on. So, last night was a big night for elections. As we all know, there were four key races, like we had covered back on Monday, in New Jersey, Virginia, California, and New York City. And it was a big night in the sense that there was a lot on stake for Democrats. In terms of proving that they have the electoral capability to fight back against the Trump administration. And also, many of these off-year and midterm election type of situations are referendums on the governing party in Washington. And so they are very reflective of where the electorate is, how people are feeling right now, and it provides momentum to whoever ends up in having a good night going into the midterms. And so right off the bat, what I will say is that it was a good night for Democrats. Like, this was the best case scenario for them in a year of floundering and failing that we have seen from the party. This was the win that they needed and really does give a big boost going into 2026. So let's talk about this. So historically, these elections that have happened the year after the presidential election, so these first off-year elections, they traditionally are not usually great for the incumbent party. Usually ends up being a rejection of them. For example, in Virginia, I think since for over 60 years or something like that, Virginia has not elected the incumbent party in the White House into the governorship, with the exception of 2014, when Democrats did win the governorship there. But it's not necessarily this big, or not 2014, sorry, 2013. But whatever it is not usually a great time for the incumbent party. However, when we are looking at the results that have been coming in from these states, we are looking at the margins. Democrats did historically poorly in all of these parts of the country, with the exception of California, but even California too, I guess, in 2024, where Republicans were running up the numbers, and they ran it up very close. I think Kamala Harris won states like Virginia by 6 points, states that Biden won by 11, or in New Jersey, where the numbers were run up to a point where Democrats were getting uncomfortable, and there were conversations about whether or not New Jersey was actually truly a blue state. And so that was what was on the ballot last night. And the biggest issues ended up becoming affordability, the cost of living. I think Democrats really did not pick up on that last year. That really got knocked into them this year, where they did talk about affordability and what Trump was doing, and how Trump basically did not fix any of the problems that he was set out to fix. So it was a good night in terms of getting that message across. So let's talk about what happened in each of these races. So a quick recap. Democrats won across the board. In New Jersey, they won the governorship. In Virginia, they won the governorship. In New York City, they won the mayoral race. And in California, Proposition 50 passed. So the significance of each of these, it's pretty big. In Virginia, Abigail Spanberger has just been elected the first female governor of the state of Virginia, flipping that seat from Republicans, and she won by a dominating margin. I think it was 12%, double-digit margin, which is pretty big. I don't know exactly. I mean, at least in my lifetime, I believe that is the biggest margin that a Democrat or anyone has won the governorship of Virginia. But even in general, I think even longer than that, this is just a huge margin of victory that Abigail Spanberger has won. And she won, I mean, granted, she was running against a historically low-skilled candidate in Winsome Sears, but Abigail Spanberger in her own right was a strong candidate, and that was what she had going for her. And amidst a state like Virginia, where 150,000 federal workers are furloughed right now because of this government shutdown, Abigail Spanberger won these voters, I think, by 80 within 8 by with 80% of these voters. So this was a historic rejection of Donald Trump and the Republican agenda. And so if there were any questions with this government shutdown of who is to blame or who is carrying the burden, it's Republicans. Republicans are carrying the burden of this shutdown, and Virginia proved that. Virginia showed it in how they voted, where they did not just only vote against Donald Trump, but they actually voted for Abigail Spanberger, because I was watching her campaign. She was actually speaking to these voters and saying, yes, I understand that you are struggling right now, and I want to help you. And so with this government shutdown, I think shutdown or no shutdown for that matter, I think she would have won. But the shutdown, with the backdrop of it in this election, I think it proved that voters are punishing Republicans for this shutdown. And it shows that Republicans really never win in a shutdown. As much as they're going to try to taint Democrats for conducting it, they really can't. In New Jersey was quite the surprising margin. I mean, Mikey Sherrill here, Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, now governor-elect, I guess, won against her Republican opponent by a staggering 15%. That is much higher than I think any of us had expected New Jersey to be. New Jersey, in 2021, when Phil Murphy, the current incumbent, ran against the same Republican, actually, it was within 3 to 5 points. I can't remember the exact margin, but it was within 3 to 5 points. That was tight. And then in 2024, Kamala Harris did win this state, but it wasn't by the strong margin that you would feel confident with. And so there were questions of whether or not Donald Trump was winning New Jersey, if New Jersey was slowly becoming a red state in front of our own eyes. Mikey Sherrill just said no way and made it 15%. So that was so strong. And I think we should give her credit, because of all of the races that we were expected to see any shot for a Republican, and it was New Jersey. And it somehow ended up being the strongest margin of the night, except for Prop 50, but I don't count that one. But it was the strongest margin. So something went right here where Mikey Sherrill was underestimated, yet she somehow proved that she was going to win. And then she had some sort of resolve that carried her in. Then in New York City, of course, we have Zohran Mamdani. Mamdani was going to win. It was the margin that I was paying attention to again here. He won in a three-way race with over 50%. That's pretty big. That's a pretty good number for him. And I mean, there's no question that he was going to win. He was always expected to. And I will continue to note the way he brought out young people, the way I have seen, and I am young myself. I am friends with a lot of people that support him. I see the enthusiasm that he was bringing to young voters in a way that I don't remember many candidates bringing. And so Zohran Mamdani also had that going for him, where he very impressively has made an excitement among young voters that is going to be rewarding for him. Now, he did acknowledge in his speech that it is going to be high expectations, but he said he will meet them. And I do want to note, just in his speech, the way he gave that speech, it was very proud and very, what's the word I'm thinking of? I can't think of the word exactly, very resolute maybe in how he feels about his win. I think he's not stupid, obviously. He understands very well that he had the eyes of the world on him, like not just New York City voters watching that speech, like he had the eyes of the world on him. Everyone knows who he is now, and he is going to carry an incredible amount of pressure on him. I mean, his agenda is really ambitious. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's an ambitious agenda, and he's going to have to work not just with the New York City Council, but he's going to have to work with New York State. And so there's a lot that's resting on his success. And I think Democrats, the ones that didn't endorse him, they have to count on his success now. Like, they cannot be like, I don't know if I should endorse him or not. You have to count on his success, because no matter what happens, he is going to be tied to Democrats' success. Since, I guess also because he was the biggest race of this year, he carries that type of weight, and he's now one of the most well-known politicians in America. I mean, at least for sure, one of the most well-known Democrats, but one of the most well-known politicians in America. And so there is a pressure that is going to come with that he needs to meet. And I think that's going to be important. And then, of course, we had California's Prop 50, which was a huge success, and it was a huge gamble for Governor Gavin Newsom out there. Again, a reminder for Prop 50, it's basically giving the legislature the right to redraw the districts in California as a way to respond to Texas, which has cheated and tried to rig their maps, and not just Texas, Missouri and North Carolina, and where they're talking about in Indiana. So let's not lose sight of the fact that this is a big response. And so Governor Gavin Newsom took a very big gamble, a risk in pushing forward this Proposition 50, to change those districts. And he put his 2028 ambitions on the line, because obviously he wants to run for president. And so if this would have gone south, or if it was even close, it would have been tragic for his political career. But he staked the bet. And if you watch his speech, and I'm going to play all of the speeches from last night in just a minute, he sounded really proud, and he sounded very presidential. He was like a very, at least what I noticed was it was a very speaking to the country type of affair. Like, he was speaking to the entire country and to Democrats across the nation. Like, he was really trying to take on that mantle of being the leader of the party. And beyond that, he was encouraging other governors, other blue governors, to also step up and start redrawing their districts. So he was like trying to assume that role of leader of the party. And I think this is a win for him. I think maybe other than Zoran Mamdani, I think Governor Newsom had the best 2025 of any politician in this country. And it shows. Like, he took that risk, and within 59 days or whatever, he managed to get Prop 50 out the door, win by a huge margin, and now they're going to redraw those districts, and it's going to have great implications for Democrats in 2026, because those are 3 to 5, I've heard 9 in some cases, seats that are going to stay with Democrats, and offset some of the damage that has been done by Republicans who have openly cheated. And I think the best part for Newsom in all of this is that he has provided that fighter appeal. Like, Democrats have been looking for a fighter. That's why Mamdani won. It's why Spanberger has won. It's why Sherrill has won. And it's why Governor Newsom won in California with Prop 50. And he's able to take that national because he has provided that blueprint for what a fighter needs to look like, a fighter against Donald Trump. And it's why he's become the most common face in the opposition. And so other 2028 Democrats, I think you should take note. I think it's very obvious that Newsom knows exactly what he's doing, and he's now going to be running with some wind in his sails as we move forward. So take a look at some of that video of all of these candidates speaking last night after their victories. So why does any of this matter? So it matters because Democrats have run up numbers in ways where Republicans did not even have a shot at winning. I've seen the spin from Republicans where they're like, oh, it's a bunch of blue states in a blue city. Yes, it is. That's true. But the argument against it is that they're not even acknowledging their own success from 4 years ago. In each of these jurisdictions, and even just a year ago for that matter, in each of these states, cities, and whatever, they ran up numbers tight enough. And in cases like New Jersey, where they thought that New Jersey could actually realistically become a red state, they were talking about it, they were excited about it, and now they're just pretending like they weren't saying that just a year ago. So this is a huge success for Democrats going into 2026. It carries a lot of momentum for them and reignites this idea. I think the vision for Democrats is going to be a lot clearer, that it is about the cost of living. I read it somewhere, I think with the New York Times or Washington Post, it's affordability stupid. Just like it's the economy stupid from Bill Clinton's time, it's affordability now. And I think it's going to be very strong, and it's going to be a great 2026 if Democrats are able to recreate that over the next 364 days. And it doesn't end here. Like, now we have other cases from last night. For example, in Pennsylvania, they retained control of the state Supreme Court. If you remember, if you're from Wisconsin, a lot of you are, you remember how important the Supreme Court race was out here in April. That mattered. In Georgia, their public service commissioners, I think that's what the role is. They just won for the first time, and I think it's the first time Democrats have won any state office, specific state office like that in decades. So Democrats are now doing the work and they have the momentum running behind them. It's just they need to continue that. They need to continue that upward trajectory that they have built for themselves. Donald Trump has been historically disapproved in these past few months. I mean, I just covered the polls from just Monday where they had him at 63% disapproval, which is just insane for a president. So it's a messaging pivot that I think is going to be very strong and that I'm beginning to hear even just a few hours after this election of what it is. It's not the democracy or it's not about whatever. It's about affordability. And that's how they are manufacturing their case for 2026. So it's going to be, I think, a warning sign for Republicans. Republicans are still putting their head in the sand, and they're running on the singular bet that they're going to tie Mamdani to just about anything that happens. And I mean, yes, if Mamdani fails, it's a worthy strategy. Mamdani, however, has an appeal that's different from other boogeymen that Republicans have put up from Democrats. It's not like they're universally hated. Mamdani actually has an affirmative base from across the country that likes him. So I think Republicans are underestimating how much of a challenge it is going to be to tie Mamdani to Democrats as a strategy for them to win. Because right now, Republicans, I mean, if you took the lesson from Virginia, are getting blamed for the shutdown because they control all three branches of the government, because of the fact that they have historically unpopular policies, because their tariffs suck. Like, there's so much about what Republicans are doing. And if they think that just Mamdani is going to take them into 2026, it's not enough. It's not enough at all. And I think Democrats need to be clear-eyed and stick to message. I think in Virginia, another example was Winsome Sears ran on the populist issue, or not the populist issues, the social issues. Spanberger was very intent on affordability. And in the end, it became clear that affordability is what mattered. So Democrats have a year to prove themselves. They have a year to really establish this footing of affordability as their key issue and take that momentum into 2026. Republicans, I don't quite know what they're going to do. I mean, as long as Donald Trump is at the top of the ticket, we haven't even talked about his response. Like, he said California was rigged randomly. He said he attributed the losses last night to him not being on the ballot because, of course, Donald Trump is the reason that they win every time. I think it's a greater failure on his part, if anything, because Donald Trump's whole premise in that argument was that because he was not on the ballot, Republicans lost. What that tells me is not that Donald Trump is somehow some turnout machine. What it tells me is that Donald Trump, yes, is a turnout machine for himself, but he can't get his own voters to come out and vote for his people. And that's the weakness of Republicans that I think all knew was coming, because Democrats have now proven to be the high propensity voters who turn out in every election, whereas Donald Trump's voters don't vote in every election unless he's on the ballot. And so it's a fundamental flaw in Donald Trump's strategy that he can't turn out his own voters to vote for his party. But, I think there's more lessons to be learned than just that. I think there's so much that Democrats need to be cautionary of, and I think there's a lot that Republicans still have running for them. Not as much as I think they have, but I think Republicans need to be a little more cognizant of the fact that it's not as strong of a base that they're running on. But, that was election night last night. It was a good night for a lot of people on the left, a lot of Democrats. It was a good night for the progressive cause, and it's reigniting. Again, like I said at the top, after a year of struggle and pain after the 2024 loss, a year ago today, for that matter, Democrats now are waking up with some new hope and are waking up with a new purpose. And that's what matters. But that's all we got for today. If you liked my commentary, then go ahead and subscribe to my Substack. I'm going to post a more in-depth article about my thoughts on the 2025 election. It's also a great place to just stay in touch with the show. Another way to stay in touch with the show is to follow us on Instagram at the Ishaan S Show. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Real Ishaan Shrivastava and on Blue Sky at ishanshrivastava.bluesky.social. Alrighty, thank you so much for joining me today. I am going to be sharing an interview with candidate for Congress, Phil Andrew, coming very soon. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.